In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about variables. You should recognize variables from math. You use variables x and y. In math, we use variables to represent numbers. In coding, we use variables a lot. Very important. Without variables, because variables can change, your code can't really change. What a variable is a container that holds some data, right? So, and the different kinds of data we might want to hold. We might want to hold integers, which are whole numbers, right? We might want to hold decimal numbers, and in that case we call them floats. We might want to hold words, and those are strings. So, the first thing you need to do with variables is declare them. And so to declare a variable, you need to give it a type. So we talked about whole number 1, so an integer type is an int, and we'll call it num, and then you have to give it a name. Okay. So we have declared a variable num, and it holds whole numbers. We can also hold decimals. That would be a float, and we'll call this one, and you cannot do spaces between your words and your name. Okay. You can do underlines like that, underscores, or I like camel case. Okay, you should give your name something that means something, not X and Y we don't use too often unless it means position, not Fred because that doesn't really mean anything, and then a string. And you can't start with numbers, so this would not be okay. You cannot use a name that's already been used. We're going to hold names in this one, so we'll call it names. So those are declaring. So you give a type and a name. Then you initialize. Your initialization is good to put in start. That's why it says up at the top. Initialize. Initialize means the first time you give it a value. So we're going to make num, and we're going to use the equal sign, which is the assignment operator. So we're going to take that variable num, which and we're going to put a number in it, some data in it. So I'll put 10 in it. Right? And notice I'm ending each statement with my semicolon. Then float. Now we said float hold decimal numbers, so I'm going to put 0.5 in it. And then string. Oops, there isn't anything called float. It's called decimal num. And string. Oops, I keep doing that. Name. And strings. Words are in quotes. Alright, now I'm going to go to the build, which is like the compile. And look, it tells me an error. So this is red, which is bad. It's an error. What it's saying is the double cannot be changed to a float. So use the F to make a float. So unless I put an F after it, it doesn't know it's a float. So whenever we're making floats, which is what we usually use in Unity, we want to put the F after it. So now I'm going to build it again. And now I'm getting yellows. But yellows are warnings, so they don't really mean anything. It says it's a sign, but it wasn't used. So we made it. Now, you can also declare and initialize in one statement. So I'm going to make another type of variable, which is called a Boolean. Booleans are only true or false. So, Miss Rudolph is not tall. We'll say false. So I made some debug log statements so that we could print out our variables. So here I have the name. I want the name of the variable to print out. That's in quotes because that's exactly what I want to print out. Then I use the plus sign, which is the concatenate operator in this case, which says go ahead and take this and make this data into a string and print it out. So it's going to print out the actual data that is in them. And the same for these others. So let's Build again. Build successful, it says up here. Save when it built. Go back to our Unity and run. And let's see what printed out on the console. Nothing. Why? Because even though I made this script, it wasn't attached to any of my objects. So unless it's attached to one of my objects, we can't actually run it. So I'm going to attach it to butterfly1. And I can do that by dragging it over here, or I could drag it on the butterfly. Alright, so now we can see that it's attached there to butterfly1. So let's try running it again. And we'll go to the console and see, here we go. Num is 10, decimal num is 0.5, name Miss Rudolph is false, false, tall, false. Alright, let's go back. And now what we're going to do is, so we have this variable num, and right now it's holding 10, okay? But I can take num and I can change it to whatever I want. So using the assignment operator, I've taken num and I changed it to 20, and then we will print it out again. And at this point in the, remember the computer's going step by step, always in order. So at this point, when it prints it out, num is going to equal 20. Now notice I didn't put int in front of it because you only do the int once. That's when you declare it, you make it. When you're using it again, you only use the name. Alright, so let's save, go back to Unity, run. There we go. So we got 10 and now num is 20. Alright, so in summary, you can make different types of variables. You can make integer variables that hold whole numbers. int is for integer. You can make float numbers that hold decimals. You can make strings that hold words. You can make booleans that hold true or false. There's a couple others, but these are the ones we will use mostly in our Unity. You can use a debug statement to print them out. The equal sign, the single equal sign, is an assignment operator. It will change what the data is being held in your variable. So in this case, it changed it from 10 to 20. You need to declare variables first. When you declare them, you give them the type and a name. Names should be useful. And there's some rules on names. You can't put numbers first. You can't put underscores first. You can't have spaces in names. Right, that's enough on variables now.